spirituality and psychology tell us about trauma?
Probably the best place to start is to talk a little bit about what is trauma. What do we mean when we say trauma?
So in the field of psychology, we refer to a big T and a little t. So a big T for trauma might be a really bad car accident or sexual abuse or something like that that's happened to an individual. A smaller T might be something like being bullied on the playground or being called out in second grade by a teacher that humiliated you, something like that.
You might think, well, I never really thought of myself as having any traumas because thankfully maybe you've avoided some of those bigger, more intense experiences that Cara referred to. But really what we're saying is, surprisingly, even the smaller T's we now know can really have an effect on how it affects our lives, how we view things.
And that has to do with how we store those memories in our subconscious mind. So the foundation for that is kind of how I see it. It's like you've got layers and layers of emotions, so that have been lodged in your subconscious according to when that trauma occurred. So you've got these layers and layers and layers, and what you do in the talk therapy situation is you uncover layer after layer, and of course emotion comes to the surface. These experiences can actually exasperate how you affect or how you view things in your world after even walking out of a session. So it can be very painful experience, and it can be very exhausting.
Each of us independently in our own offices observed that sometimes, you know, the more you address something, in theory, it makes sense that what we're trying to do is work you through those emotions to get out on the other side. You know, the whole goal would be to come out on the other side of the emotions and realize that it's kind of behind you now and you can put it behind you. But oddly, and I just think this is part of human nature, the more we would address it, sometimes the angrier and angrier people got, or more fearful. You're almost encouraging neuroses. You're encouraging people to stay in their own mind.
Well, staying in their mind, let's designate, that would be their conscious mind, and that would be the analytical, critical part of your mind. So you've got the conscious mind, and then you have the subconscious mind, and understanding that you're always in this conscious mind, and that's where the rumination comes from, and these,
right,
you know, over and over, you know, negative self-talk that culminates as a result of being always in that conscious mind.
The good news now, and this is where the science comes in, we now have a better understanding of the role of the subconscious mind. Bruce Lipton said, the subconscious mind is running the show 95% of the time. Well, if it's running the show, it's obviously affecting our behavior or dictating our behavior. It doesn't require us to keep dragging people through over and over and over through a trauma. And we can give you a couple examples of some exercises that have come out, some techniques that have come about as a result of this subconscious understanding.
So if there's a big T looming, and that would be one of these bigger traumas, there are some techniques that have been developed over the last couple decades. One is called EMDR. EMDR focuses on the bilateral stimulation of both hemispheres of the brain at the same time. So you are processing back and forth as you're reliving these trauma. However, the trauma is very brief. And that's the key. You know, where talk therapy, days, weeks, months, years. EMDR is very short, 2 or 3 sessions. And usually you have processed the emotion that is attached to that memory. So that's performed by a licensed therapist, and it's a lot of research behind it. Very, very effective for big traumas. Another really effective tool is known as emotional freedom therapy. That's a less studied modality, however, very, very effective.
They just find it works through observation.
And you can go online and Google EFT and see what kinds of practitioners are in your area that work with that. But again, it's about moving that in that deep brainwave state, moving that energy and releasing.
Energy psychology is kind of the field that we're getting into, because what we're doing is moving energy. And in the moving of energy, your traumatic memories are stored in the form of energy, so we're moving energy out.
So we focus a little bit on psychotherapy and that understanding of that. In science, we've touched on that. And then, so the other thing that we want to talk to you about is the spiritual perspective of trauma, and how can we learn from that?
So we have the scientific side now that makes the releasing of the memories easier. But the spiritual side is still really important, because we can, you can see that as you've had experiences and as you try to understand maybe why certain experiences that you've had, or maybe the way you were raised, we refer to those as atmospheric conditions, which are specific examples of ways you were raised, whether it was a really strict environment, a loving environment, maybe a negligent environment, an abusive environment. These are factors that affect us, and then help us understand maybe, where we need to go from there, or what we need to learn from understanding and identifying these things.
In Eastern spiritual traditions, of course, there is such thing known as duality. So you've got your light and your dark, and you've got the understanding of the yin and the yang. There's always a lifelong play going on of light and dark, and these are teachable lessons that we learn. So applying those to trauma can be useful.
It helps you find more of your life mission and more what's important to you if you really understand kind of the bigger picture.
Acceptance. That allows for the trauma to have a level of acceptance if you combine all of these ways of thinking.
Right. So we've just really stumbled upon the tip of the iceberg of why Cara and I are on a mission about all this, because we really think that the more we understand this stuff, it's turning into a true paradigm shift for the future of psychotherapy. We couldn't be more thrilled.
So stay tuned. We're going to keep coming with these videos and teaching, and we learn as we teach them as well. So stay tuned.
Thanks.